if that's okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Inner Journey Thrive on Thursday. Our topic tonight is contemplation, and I'm grateful to and excited to share what I've learned about contemplation recently. But first, we will begin with our invocation from Mary Lee.
Let's all take a deep breath and settle into this wonderful, relaxed God space, knowing that this gathering is surrounded by love and that precious, glorious God essence. Our time together is blessed and stimulating and has created a wonderful space of learning, fellowship, love, and blessings. And I'll release that knowing into the law and into this setting, knowing that it is so and so it is.
And so it is. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, and welcome, Mary Lee and Reverend Sue Ellen, for tonight as well, and all of our viewers. So I'm going to talk about a little book that I discovered recently on contemplation. And it has been so fascinating. And I'm going to have some notes up here because I may sound like I'm reading sometimes, but I do this because my mind is like a spaghetti colander sometimes. It gets a little crazy and I don't remember things. So here we go. I did recently find this little book about contemplation. And it just brought to me so much information that I did not know. And I was so glad to find it. I'm just not sure I've ever done contemplation correctly. So I want to start with a definition of contemplation. And I'll tell you first, as I was reading this book, what got me was the author talked about it was important to contemplate what he was discussing. And I thought that was interesting because he was discussing contemplation. And then I came to find out as I read further, or actually was in a different book that I read, that he actually wrote this little book on contemplation. So I bought it. And the book is called The Art of Contemplation, A Gentle Path to Wholeness and Prosperity by Richard Rudd. Let me just show you what it looks like. So if this shows up okay, there you go. It's a dark cover with this circle with a little dot in the middle. Like you see my blinds are open. And by Richard Rudd, The Art of Contemplation, A Gentle Path to Wholeness and Prosperity. And I got it on Amazon, and I have it on my little Kindle there. He explains that the purpose of this book is to help you find, follow, and fulfill the true curve of your life, and thus complete the circle you began to draw when you were born. The book is divided into three main sections, each describing an area of development as you engage more into the process of contemplation. It's not an active, forced process. It's not a kind of a worked process. It's a path of gentle unfolding. The more you do it, the more that happens within. So he describes these three paths of unfolding as mental contemplation, which then leads to emotional contemplation, which leads to physical contemplation. And then within each of those three paths, you have a technique which opens to confirmation, which then leads to the reward. So the only definition or experience I'd had before this of contemplation was what I and we were taught in our Science of Mind classes and practitioner training. So I dug out my page from my own practitioner training from 2008, and this is year one, term one, class two. Contemplation. The art of contemplation is a deeper comprehension or breakthrough to understanding of a given object or subject. Reading scripture, reflection, or a paragraph or sentence that touches you. Your praying and communing with nature are all forms of contemplation. It's a practice that serves to transform perception and the understanding of the nature of reality. Each morning, choose a quote, a sentence, or piece of scripture at random, and throughout the day, reflect on it. See life through the lens of this passage. This is contemplation. This is the path to understanding oneness with all that is. So that sounded good. I tried to do that. It wasn't very clear to me really on what to do. This suggests to pick something to think about. Well, to be honest, I think about things all day long to the point of obsession at times. So am I contemplating? Am I doing any healing work and growth work and having the ahas of understanding? No, I did not. Of all the spiritual practices we're taught in our classes and our training, you have meditation, spiritual mind treatment, visioning, silence, mindfulness. Contemplation has always been the most vague to me. So when I found this little book, I thought, I'll give it a try. And I really like how it describes the path of contemplation leading to outcomes, that there's nothing forced and nothing worked. There's a gentleness of allowing. And even though you may pick a topic or question, the work that happens is within and it's for and about you, and it changes you on multiple levels inside. It's very calming. It brings a calmness to you, and you discover more subconscious stuff. You raise your frequency and even enlightening from within. I thought that sounded pretty cool. I'm going to give a description of what the author talks about this, and then I'll go into a little example of the technique and the path and share a little bit, and then we're going to share. From the author, the journey leads inwards, although it will also affect your outer life in mysterious and beneficial ways. This is because our worldly outer life flows from the roots of our inner life in how we think, what we feel, and in what we believe. And that's what we learn in Science of Mind, right? That's what we teach. So that's good. How does contemplation differ from meditation and mindfulness? First, no, you don't have to give up any of these other modalities that you use. They all work together, and contemplation actually works along with everything and can help even deepen some other practices. When we're in prayer, we're speaking to something. When we're in meditation, we're going within and receiving. That's what I always learned. Or sometimes we're in a guided meditation. In mindfulness, we're inwardly watching and being present with the mind, our emotions and body, and the exterior world. Contemplation, though, is gently engaging the power of the mind, emotions, and the body, using their energy to bring an increased state of self-awareness and freedom. It brings together both the left brain technique and the right brain leaps in awareness. It makes use of mindfulness in the background while also using the power of imaginative thinking in the foreground. It suits different personality types, whether you're intellectual, emotional, or kinesthetic. It adapts to you. And I'm kinesthetic. So that's another reason why this felt real good to learn this for me. Contemplation is described as a mystery with the purpose of turning your energies inward to make your life a centrifugal experiment in order to first discover and then embrace your true higher and purpose. I really like that. That's been a big question in my mind lately. Higher purpose. To know who you really are, we have to go beyond the mind itself, and contemplation does that. It's a form of unlearning as we've learned to rely so much on our intellect, and the open new pathways beyond that. One of the goals is that once we learn our true inner rhythm in life, we naturally become a contemplative person. We breathe more deeply, slow down a bit, and gain a higher ability to tap into the universal wisdom that can help us make sense of anything that comes our way. There are no breathing exercises in this book. However, the breath will change the further you get into the process. The author equates breath to freedom. The deeper we breathe, the freer we feel. You begin to let go of unconscious stress patterns in the body that prevent us from breathing deeply. I used to hold my breath a lot. And I would breathe very shallow while I held my stomach in real tight for long periods of time because I thought that's what women were supposed to do. I was very constricted. One of the consequences of that is that my body would suddenly then force me to take a big breath and a big sigh on the exhale. And if I was standing too close to anybody else, they would always look at me and say, "What's wrong?" I'd have to say, "Nothing, I'm just breathing." And that was always kind of weird. So now I choose to let my belly out and I breathe for whatever my body needs. With regular practice, your breathing and mine will become deeper and actually more rhythmic. In the title, it states a gentle path to wholeness and prosperity. As you practice contemplation more, you'll begin to experience the whole field, which includes the field of true prosperity. Prosperity is a living, vibrating field that unifies all areas of your life into healthy, harmonic whole. You naturally come into alignment with prosperity. I like that. Again, it's like just an allowing. You're not forcing or working or having to focus and do it. Once you get into this process, it's like organically your body kind of moves into that field when you're there, or the more you do it. I just think that's fascinating. There's so much more description from the author in the book, of course, and what his process was, why he got into it, and what it felt like the more he practiced this and how it changed him. So it is just that gentle opening, and we become more of that field itself. So with this practice, we also learn to balance the inner and the outer, and we become the purpose of our life. Contemplation, put the letters in the right place, Lynn, can be in stillness, silence, or in movement. All of it will lead to the goal, which is rushes of clarity in our lives. The book of techniques and tips was not written with an idea that you've never done this before or that you don't know how to do it, because most of us have done it and probably already know. We've all done it in different forms throughout the day, probably. You might have an issue going on and you throw out a question to the universe, and eventually you become aware of a solution. Maybe while you're washing the dishes, or from a dream, you wake up and go, boom, that's it, that's my answer. That's kind of contemplation too. Here, the author's goal is to increase the frequency of the spontaneous rushes of clarity in our lives. The answers are always within. We know that. And we're taught that in our philosophy from day one. Why not create more open flow and increase this connection? Now, you may say, and maybe you already have a perfect connection to God, and that's cool, or to this inner knowing. This idea, this flow opens so many overall benefits as well. It's hard to say no to the way that this author presents it and how it changes not only on the inside, but the outside and our own physical field and the calmness that it brings. In this increasing busy world, we're all busy. It feels like sometimes there are less and less hours in the day, and you may feel like you don't have time for contemplation. I can't add one more thing to my schedule. Well, contemplation happens in the gaps between the thoughts. It goes on in the background even while we're busy. So when we stop to rest or pause, which we'll learn about in a minute, suddenly something wells up in us. Then we realize it's one of those rare moments of pure being. It's not a fast art. It's a wonderful, deep, lustrous, slow burn. With practice and the increase of awareness and flow, you may find that everything in your life becomes more efficient. Your emotions come into balance and your mind becomes lucid and clear. He keeps using this word flow, and I know that Reverend Sue Ellen loves the term divine flow, and even in prayer, let's pray for divine flow. And I thought about you, Sue Ellen, through the whole time reading this. So this is a practice that helps increase that awareness and that divine flow. That's pretty good. At the beginning, I described the three paths or unfolding of contemplation. I'll say them again here. You have mental contemplation, which leads to emotional contemplation, which leads to physical contemplation. And again, within each of these paths of contemplation, you have a technique, a confirmation, and the reward. So I want to tell you about the first path and its technique. And then I'll leave the rest up to you if you want to know more. The first step relates to the mind. It is mental contemplation and leads to the first technique, which is pausing. You begin by choosing what you might want to contemplate. In the beginning, it might just be about yourself, your life path, your purpose. It can even be a picture, a word or phrase, anything, or even scripture, is like that first definition I read. You can choose something to inspire you and uplift you, or you can choose something that's a challenge for you right now in the moment, and the process will help diffuse the challenge. So once you've chosen your topic or subject, you allow it to settle into your thought. There's no rules about where you do this or when you do this or what position you have to be in. You just allow the simplicity. Once you make your choice and you're being with it, it'll move in and out of your thoughts during the day. It begins very simple, focusing your awareness on something, and it deepens eventually, revealing the layers of clarity. If it's a challenge that you've chosen, focus on the resolution. What's your goal? Hold the goal for as long as you can in your thought, and when your awareness drifts away, simply bring it back. No need for tension or forcing. When the thought goes away again, or the day, the day has to get going, it's time to get moving, you're going to remember that later during the day or any time. In this way, your awareness follows its own inner rhythms, and this will become your pattern. Once you begin this, the contemplation never ends. It goes on in the background all the time, even when we don't realize it. The more we return to the subject during the day, the deeper it enters into your own unconscious mind. You go into it when you want to, and that's the simplicity of it. But you can set a time, if you can set a time aside each day, a specific time, then that will actually greatly enhance the results. So that's the first step. Pick a topic or a subject, let it sink in, and it'll move in and out of your thoughts during the day. The technique that this leads to is pausing, the pause. During the day, there are moments when things just naturally slow down. There's a pause naturally in your life. You're waiting for an elevator, you're stopping at a red light, a TV commercial, or maybe even while you're sitting in the bathroom. You learn to look for those pauses. You'll begin to notice them. And you become even more aware of them once you kind of set that in your mind. And it is in that moment, the pause, you catch that, you take a breath, and you let go for just a moment or two and let your shoulders drop. It doesn't have to be long, or it can be as long as you want. In that pause is the gap. In the gap is something creative. And in that gap, you soon begin to remember yourself, and you experience a wonderful deep breath, or as this author calls it, the luscious sigh. I think that's so cool. This is where you may suddenly have an inspiration, an idea, or a quick thought about your subject of contemplation. Now, I can't say this will happen the very first time, but your body will get used to what you are setting up as your pattern. When I realized that he was talking about the gap, I remembered Eckhart Tolle in The Power of Now. And he writes about the gap. And he quotes, "Every time you create a gap in the stream of mind, the light of consciousness grows stronger." And then he adds more to that. Create a gap in the mind stream simply by directing the focus of your attention into the now. Just become intensely conscious of the present moment. This is a deeply satisfying thing to do. In this way, you draw consciousness away from the mind activity and create a gap of no mind in which you are highly alert and aware, but not thinking. This is the essence of meditation. But I will also say that it is that in all of a sudden, when you realize you're in the pause, that's a gap also. And in the pause, when you realize it hits you, or you've chosen that moment, you take that breath and you let yourself relax for just that moment. Yeah. That's the pause of contemplation and slowing the breath. Now, you don't have to stop moving around for a pause either. You can maybe, well, you should slow down. I have to say that. There can be a transitioning pause from one event to the next. You can walk while you're in a pause. And there's even contemplative or meditative walking. So the pause can happen and you almost kind of set your rule for it, but you do need to be a little slower because you want to make sure you're out of that mind craziness. Anything that breaks that monotony of our ceaseless activity, we like to call it, can be classified as a pause. There are so many physical, mental, and emotional benefits of the pause itself. And it's the pause that will open you to the first confirmation, which is insight. Okay, so I've described contemplation, some of the benefits, providing a beginning what to do, and added the pause, which is the connector to your subject and the space within, your subconscious, and the gap, which is the doorway to receiving your insight. So I had my first spontaneous pause today, and I was brushing my teeth. And all of a sudden, I mean, because that's like a, you know what you're doing. And all of a sudden it was like, and my shoulders dropped. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that's my first automatic pause. And my body itself just relaxed. And I realized what it was. And I took a deep breath and I slowly finished what I was doing. And then I just closed my eyes and I just let it be for a moment and just took a couple easy, slow breaths. And I had that. And it was so exciting that it actually worked. It did it. So I just thought that was great. So that's my story. That's my information. And that's what I wanted to share. And I hope that we have some sharing we can do here. And if you're watching this on YouTube, on our Inner Journey Thrive YouTube channel, I hope that you'll add your comments below if you have also had an experience with contemplation. So, yeah. So what do you think? Have you guys
Wow.
practiced with that?
I'm looking forward to looking for the book
Good.
because it sounds like it would be very interesting, very helpful.
Mm-hmm. No, I have not, but I can think of a more wonderful thing to start thinking about and start looking for and start practicing.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to reading the book as well
Yeah.
and getting more info from it. Though I appreciate the introduction to it you've provided.
Yeah. This is going to work well for me because I'm an antsy person. It's very difficult to sit still, and I've been meditating since the middle 80s. I mean, it's like it's been a practice, and I find that I go in and out of time when I can sit still, and then I just cannot sit still. I'm in one of my phases where I cannot sit still. And when he described, and I always thought contemplation was one of those things you have to sit still and not move a muscle for a long time until I read his book. And that description that you can set your subject in the morning or at some point during the day, and then it's going to do the work for you almost. And I like that. But, and then the more you get into it, the pause and the fact that it actually happened is like, wow. So that is, I really think I'm gonna do some really good work with this.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Richard Rudd, RUDD.
Yes. Yes. I have some other friends right now who are very involved in reading another one of his books called The Gene Keys. And I bought that book because my friends were talking about it. And it's actually in the first couple, like in the first how to use this book, where he says every time you read a new chapter about, what's in your gene keys, whatever that, blah, blah, you should contemplate it during the day. And I thought, oh God, there's that word. I don't know how to do that. So, and then he goes on and says, well, you can buy my little book. So that's where I got the idea from. And I'm really glad I did. So I just had to share that.
Cool. Good.
Yeah.
Well worth the time and energy you put into it.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
It certainly sounds like it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So but even in your practitioner classes, when you teach, we go through, all these different spiritual processes and modalities, and we talk about them at least.
Right.
And I
I
find
sus-
it, go ahead.
I was going to say, I suspect now, having the impetus from your talk to go and buy this book, that will mean that I go into that deeper than I have done in the past. Because as you say, you just get a list of here these things are, and we give them these things in foundations most of the time, bits and pieces,
Mm-hmm.
and yet we don't spend a whole lot of time on any of them.
Yes.
Knowing that you'll pick up, each one of you will pick up whatever you're led to pick up, which will be right for you. And so sometime at later points, we take on different things. I picked up on journaling right away because it was very helpful for me right then. And
Right.
sometimes I journal a lot, sometimes I journal a little, and I go through phases where that's what I'm doing, or I'm all written out, so to speak, and I don't need to journal right then.
Right.
So then I'll go into doing something different. And, sometimes meditation will be a 10-minute meditation every day for 6 weeks. And then all of a sudden it'll be a 40-minute meditation every day. Well, that just kind of messes the schedule up, but I've learned to work with it.
Right. Right.
It just shifts as apparently as my mind and body and spirit need it to shift. So this will be a new piece to take into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I realized that we focused on it when I was in my training, and I think even while I was doing some of the teaching, we would focus on meditation probably the most. And mention the journaling, and my homework was, that I was given was meditate and journal. And they didn't really talk about they didn't talk about contemplation or some of the other things.
Yep.
So
You did visioning once in a while.
once in a while, yeah. Which I still love and I do all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I still do that regularly. So, but this one I like doing something new anyway every now and then. So this is going to be kind of fun. Yeah.
Neat.
What's your favorite practice, Mary Lee?
Well, this may very well become it, but just meditating and just taking time to sit still and just sit in the silence, let my mind, I don't know if you can call that a practice, but just letting go of everything and just sitting quietly for a little bit and not letting the mind go any particular place. And just sit like that for a few minutes before I return to the everydayness of life. I think that's probably what I like to.
And I think the way you described that is, I think she's frozen. Can you hear us?
Mm-hmm. She'll be back.
Yeah.
She did this in and out of class last night too.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, what she was describing, just sitting in the silence, is a very good practice, a spiritual practice. And I had something written down that I heard somebody say not too long ago, and it's stillness, presence, and consciousness. There
I'm
you
back.
are. I was just saying that your spiritual practice of just sitting in the silence is very important and very good. I was just saying, I wrote these 3 things down that I heard: stillness, presence, and consciousness. and the three things that go together. And then someone else was talking about the importance of silence in the stillness.
Mhm.
And if you can meditate, or if you want to call it meditation then, and be in that silence and stillness without music, without a focus, or without a guided meditation, just so it's just real silence. He described that as the ultimate meditation. And for how long can you do that? So I can't do that for long. My brain goes.
I find it interesting that mine will sometimes let me do that for a long time,
Oh, that's good.
30, 45 minutes, but not often. Generally, it'll kick me out, so to speak, after about 15.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes I can't get there at all, but I
Right.
almost always meditate in the silence. I don't have music or guided meditation at all.
Yeah, I don't anymore when I meditate, but it is very difficult to do silence. I try.
And for me, it can be anywhere from like 10 minutes to longer, as Sue Ellen says,
Mhm.
25, somewhere around in there. But even just a few minutes, I
Yeah.
find very helpful for myself. So.
Mhm.
Mhm. Using this new contemplation piece that we're about to learn, or that we've got the beginning drifts of here, will be helpful in terms of those short spaces, being able to say, okay, right now I'm between projects at work. Let me just take a moment, or 5 or 10, but let me take a moment and clear my mind and breathe and go from there. Bring back out in my mind whatever it was I'm picked to contemplate for the day.
Yeah. Cool. That's what that's what I think is cool. It almost like it fits our active lifestyle
Mm-hmm.
with things.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have any questions?
I do not.
Not the question so much as more curiosity and an interest to pick up on what you shared with us, Lynne, and learn more.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um,
I read the book all the way through, and he says kind of like at the end of it, this is not a book that you can read all the way through once and then figure out that you're going to do it. So you'll go back now and then read a section and then a section as you work as you work this process and the unfolding, and then realize where you are in the unfolding. Because you have the first path, and then the technique and the reward. Was it technique, insight, and reward? And then you'll go to the emotional path, and then the technique again, and the insight and the reward, and then or confirmation. Yeah. So each of those sections, what it does to your body and your system, has a whole nother kind of a round that it does for you.
How long is this book? How you said it was little, but you showed us an iPad, so
This well, my Kindle says I think it's 99 pages.
that's
So
not a big book, but I wouldn't call it a little book either.
okay.
I,
Yeah,
I'm,
sorry.
a little book is a little book with 50 or so less pages.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
A little book is a big pamphlet.
Little book, Gene Key's Art of Contemplation. Okay, so and I got my Kindle was $10. If you
Mhm.
buy it new, it's 20 in a regular book size, regular book thing, and then 100 pages.
Okay.
Yeah. So, okay.
So the question then becomes, do I really want a Kindle version or do I want a hard version that I can thumb and underline and
Underline and turn corners of and
And put your little tabs in it for the sections, for the pathways and yeah.
yeah, right.
or
Right.
make part of your daily groups of readings.
Yes, right. Very much, yes.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
No. I have
That'll
a
be a question you
tendency.
can contemplate. Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Awesome.
I have a tendency to want to keep the spiritual things for the most part in physical form, so that I can say, oh, I've got this book and you might like it because it's blah blah blah. So I have a physical thing to do, and then yet I find that there's on my iPad or my Kindle there's some that I have gotten, but I generally have them in both forms.
Yeah.
Not
You'll
all.
have the same book in both forms?
I have many times.
Okay,
Yeah.
that works.
I may say many times. I probably have 25 books that I have in both forms. So,
Very good.
Oh, Kindle and the actual
and the
book
actual
itself.
book. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Because I don't take all the books with me when I travel, and I have whatever that I
Right.
travel with. So,
Kindle is
Awesome.
pretty easy to travel with a bunch of books.
yes. And I have quite a variety on there. So it's good. I can find something for any mood.
There you go.
any mood and any situation.
That's right. There you go. Well, great. Thank you so much for
Yes.
introducing us to this book.
Yes, thank
welcome.
you, Lynn.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So for our audience tonight, we are a small teaching chapter, innerjourney.org. And this Thursday Thrive service is the first and third and fifth Thursdays of the month. The first, second, and fifth Thursday, and the fifth Thursday. Am I saying that right? Yes.
No,
And
first, third, and fifth.
and
First,
third.
third, and fifth.
Yes, and the fifth Thursday is usually a visioning activity. So there you go. So I'd like to offer our number if you feel so inclined to donate tonight. And the number is, does that read backwards or forwards?
Forward.
Oh, very
Forward.
good. There you go. So this is our number if you would like to do a little donation for us to help us continue with this. It's 405-337-9739. And you would put in the word for the night is peace. Peace. Contemplation will bring you peace. And peacefulness.
Indeed, it will.
Yeah. So I thank you very much for joining us. And I know that this information is pleasing and sits well, no matter what your choice is when you go from here tonight. And I know that all is at peace. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.